Alright, so it's St. Patrick's Day and this guy runs into an Irish bank and robs it. And points a gun at the teller, tells him to put a bunch of money in the bag, and as the teller does so, and as he's leaving, one brave Irish customer jumps up and grabs his hood and his mask and pulls it off and sees him. And the robber shoots him dead. And he looks around real quick to see if anybody else had seen him. And there was a male teller there that was looking straight at him, and he shoots him dead. And the bank robber's really mad, and he says, "Anybody else see my face?" And he looks around and he sees one hand go up, and there's this elderly Irish man, and the guy says, I think my wife got a pretty good look at you." So Paddy had a little bit too much to drink celebrating St. Patrick's Day at the pub. And foolishly he decides to drive home. And he's weaving the car all over the place, all over the road. And sure enough, he gets pulled over by the cops. And the cop comes up, he says, "Hey, you're weaving all over the road, where you been?" And Paddy says, "Where'd I been at the pub, of course, it's St. Paddy's Day." And the cop says, "Yeah, that's not a good thing to hear. I think you're a little drunk there." And Paddy kind of smiles and he's like, "Well, you might be right." The cop looks at him, he says, "Well, you know, it's not good. There are a few intersections back. You were weaving pretty severely and your wife fell out of the car." And Paddy looks at him and he says, "Oh, thank heavens, there for a minute I thought I'd gone deaf." So there's this tourist and he's over visiting Ireland. And he's in Cork and he wants to drive to Dublin. And he finds a couple young lads there and he says, "Hey, excuse me, can you point out the quickest way to Dublin?" And the guy says, "Well, you're on foot or are you in a car?" And the tourist says, "Well, I'm in a car." And the young lad says, "Well, then that'd be the quickest way." So Paddy wakes up the day after St. Patrick's Day and he's in the hospital, covered in bandages. And he notices his friend Mick is sitting there. And he says, "Mick, what happened?" And Mick says, "Well, you know, you got pretty wasted last night. And at one point, towards the end of the night, you said that you could jump out the window and fly around the bar." And Paddy goes, "Oh, that's horrible." He goes, "Why didn't you stop me?" And Nick says, "Stop you? Hell, I bet $50 on you." Alright, so it's St. Patrick's Day, and the bar has hired a ventriloquist to come in. And the ventriloquist is up there on stage, and is telling all kinds of Irish jokes. And finally this one Irishman's in the crowd, and he gets really pissed and angry. And he stands up and he says, "Oh, I'm tired of you making fun of the Irish and acting like we're all drunks and ignorant fools." And the ventriloquist is kind of taken back by this, and he says, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anybody." And the Irishman jumps up and says, "Not you, you twit, I'm talking about the asshole on your knee." So Paddy walked into a bar on St. Paddy's Day, and he orders a martini. And he drinks the martini and he takes the olive out and he puts it in a jar. And he orders another martini. And he just keeps doing this till he's got the whole jar full of martinis. And one of the customers is sitting there watching him. And he gets the jar full, he gets up, he's getting ready to go. He says, "Excuse me," he's like, I'm kind of curious of what the heck was going on here. You kept ordering martinis, taking the olive out, putting it in the jar. What's the deal?" And the guy says, "Oh, well, nothing really, but the wife sent me out for a jar of olives." So there's this Irish priest, and he's driving down the road in Connecticut, and he gets pulled over by one of Connecticut's finest. And the trooper comes up, and he asks for his license and registration, and he's getting them. He asks him where he's going, and the priest says, "Oh, I'm just headed home." And he notices that he can smell some alcohol on his breath, and he looks in the car, and he notices you can see a bottle of wine over there. And the cop says, "Well, excuse me there, have you been drinking tonight?" And the priest says, "No, just water." And the trooper says, well, I think I can smell a little alcohol on your breath. And the priest looks at the bottle and he says, oh my heavens, Jesus, he's done it again.